you're making real estate videos trying to attract clients, then you're making cost of living videos no matter what. Let's talk about why the cost of living video is so important, and then just a couple different variations on that video that you could and should make. I'm Sam, and I run a YouTube channel called Living in Tampa. Tampa real estate leads, they don't come in as leads, they come in as clients, let's be honest. And one of the main topics that we talk about is cost of living. And it seems like, how do you keep talking about that topic? And I remember when I first started thinking, how will I keep talking about this topic? That seems ineffective, unhelpful, all those kind of things. And I remember in the beginning, it felt clunky. It felt like, oh, I'm just talking about like how Tampa compares to the national average. And I'm just like using random numbers that seem kind of arbitrary to me. And I'm not sure if people will actually connect with these numbers or they'll find something useful in it. So that's the first video you make. Cost of living, your biggest keyword, which for me is Tampa, even though I'm on kind of the edge of Tampa. And in that you go through like cost of housing, average income, cost of everything associated with having a house. So like taxes and insurance. Here it's like pest control, things like that. Then you talk about the normal life expenses. Food is a big deal for people. Are groceries competitive with the national average? What are your grocery options? Dining out, like where does that kind of stack up? And then you're talking about like other normal expenses, like cell phones. Are cell phone plans more expensive? Is internet more expensive? Then you're diving into like car insurance. Is car insurance more expensive? Is health insurance? Is medical coverage? Like if you're actually going into the hospital, is it normal? All those kind of things. Mostly state to state, it averages out pretty well, especially if you're in a city this size, a couple million people. They're all pretty similar unless you get into, the well-known, really expensive cities. But as I was making these videos, I realized another way to present this. And it was because someone called me, and they emailed from Ireland. And they asked, in the email it said like, hey, you give a lot of great information about like what stuff costs, but I'm like moving there with my family and my wife and 2 kids, and I'm just trying to figure out like what amount of a salary do I need? Coming from this country that has these kind of like free medical things and stuff like that, but also has these taxes, how much money do I need to make? If I'm applying for jobs, what do I need to really need to make it? And I like this question because it let me tell a different story. It let me tell kind of like how much money you need to make to live here. Like what is your threshold there? And so I made a video where I told that story, and I told his story and kind of how I broke it down to him, how I explained it, and gave a number of how much it cost. And of course, that number gets outdated eventually. That's one of the keys, is you have to just keep remaking these videos all the time. And if you have a couple ways to communicate cost of living, you could essentially create a cost of living video every single month. Especially if you're already creating 8 videos a month. One of those should be cost of living. Not that it has to have that in the title. Could, but that's the topic. So this is one of the ways that could be the topic. So another way that could be the topic, cost of living, still the topic. What does it cost to buy a house? So that's just a simple way to where you could look at a house, tell a story. Hey, my client, even if I was the client at first, I was my first real estate transaction. My client's looking at this house that's, $300,000 or $800,000, whatever it is. This is the payment they will have. They're planning on putting down 10% or 20%, whatever. Based on these interest rates, their payment will be $3,000. That includes taxes and insurance, and taxes at this place are more expensive because of this. And insurance, we eventually found insurance for this price. And that whole story communicates what it costs to buy a house and what the expected monthly expenses are just to service the loan, pay the insurance and taxes. There's other costs with a house, with home ownership, that's a video you can make too. So that one is what it costs to buy a house. Another video I've done a couple times is just talking about insurance. Insurance is a big topic in Florida, and I'm sure there's something similar, a similar kind of big topic that people talk about a lot that affects homeowners in your area. You got to be in the news. You got to subscribe to your Realtor news. Even those basic kind of sources will give you these kind of ideas. So one story I told was actually about my own insurance, and I got a letter for renewal, and it had gone up like double. It had gone up like 100%. So I made the video, my insurance doubled. That title gets good clicks, the thumbnail gets good clicks. And then in the video, I was out shooting drone footage for another video series. So I talked about, hey, we're shooting this video series about waterfront houses. And while we're doing that, I want to share about this insurance thing that I ran into. So I start sharing about the insurance thing, and the insurance thing resolved going up not 100%, it went up like 20%. But the initial renewal was a 100% increase. And so I used that story to talk about insurance, some of the issues with predatory roofing or hurricanes and storms and additional flood insurance, those kind of things. So that was still under the cost of living blanket that I've created. And one key to all these things is you make the video, and then it's information that you've researched and gained a deeper knowledge of, and then you insert it into other videos. And every time you insert it into another video, you reference the video that you already made and say, yeah, remember that story I told about my insurance doing this thing, and that's how it resolved, and that video is linked up above. Like that kind of connection to like, I'm providing you all of this information and it's all right here, really accessible. Not only does an audience like that, but YouTube loves that whenever you keep them on the platform and keep them in your channel. And if you create all of this useful information, then you can point back to it really easily as you interject little parts of it later on. Another thing that informs these videos is the questions that come from these videos. So people will ask me, well, like, what about CDDs? Why are CDDs, like, CDDs are community development deeds. And it's just kind of a property tax thing. When they redevelop a new area, they push these higher property taxes back to the new residents of that area for like 30 years. So property taxes in those areas are high, and then that's stated on a separate CDD form. It's not stated on the property taxes. So people ask about that kind of thing a lot. People ask about like homestead exemption, which is a way that the property taxes are capped in Florida. The growth of the property taxes is capped. And so you start to like stack up some of these things, and then you can do a Q&A video, cost of living Q&A. If you've got 5 questions for that, that's plenty, because you just let yourself kind of talk about it for a little while. You relax and just pretend like you're answering somebody's question. You're answering a client's question, and you just go through each like dynamic of it and let it be kind of nuanced. Like people want that kind of information. Okay, and then one of the final cost of living videos that I recommend is hidden costs. And you can come up with 10 hidden costs pretty easily, and they might be similar to things you've already talked about in other cost of living videos. You know, it might be those CDD fees, it might be pest control, it might be flood insurance. And these hidden costs don't have to apply to everyone, but they're just kind of things that people are often thinking about when they call you. Or just imagine you're moving to your area. What are you going to think about, and what would surprise you? It might be a cost, it might be a savings. So you could kind of do both of those in one video, or you could break that up into 2 videos. The savings, like in Florida, would be no state income tax, property tax growth being capped. Like there's things like that. I think in our next video, I want to talk about how you kind of capture stories as they're happening. Because I made a cost of living video about questioning, is Tampa becoming unaffordable? And that's very much cost of living. But I told a story about a client that was trying to buy and then decided not to because of prices, because of interest rates, really, combined with prices, I guess. But maybe we'll talk about that next week, because I think that is some valuable information of how to capture stories, how to remember client stories as they're happening. All right, I hope you found this super useful. If you have any questions, I would love to read them, hear them, see them, send comments, emails, anything. I'd love to hear from you.